Hello and welcome to episode 108 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. Just a couple of guys drinking some irregular beers, talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular the online client MTG Arena.
And today we're talking about the Arena Championship and Shadows Over Innistrad Remastered that's coming out tomorrow, which is, it's in the past for you, but for us it's tomorrow. But of course, before we get started, each week we both bring a beer. We drink Jeff's, then drink mine, rate them on a scale of bronze to mythic, and choose the best for last. So with that, Jeff, what's on tap?
All right. Got something exciting this week. People who are fans of the show know that I live in Hamilton, and I'm a fan of a brewery called Fairweather.
Mm-hmm.
We've had them on a few times, and we've even had a guest on the show who is a brewer at Fairweather. So I've brought a Fairweather beer called Gummy Venus. You can see it has gummy bears all over the can. It is a pale sour with lactose orange, pineapple, and rosemary.
Yeah.
And it's 7%. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's 7%.
I was thinking it'd be like 5, but
I was also thinking that until I twisted the can around. I was like, whoa. At the beginning of that, I thought you were saying that, as fans of the show, you know that you love sour beers, and I was just laughing at that. And in fact, you did not go in that
I was going to go
direction.
that way, but then I was like, I can't lie to them like that.
Yeah. Usually sours are my type of thing. Also, Jeff, these are gummy Venus de Milos, not gummy bears necessarily.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Come on. Jeez, Jeff. Anyway, let's crack this open. Here we go. Alrighty. And with that, we have some magic news. I kind of already
Is this like
said
a Simpsons reference or something? I feel like it's a Simpsons reference, but
the gummy Venus de Milo.
yeah.
Wow, I just interrupt magic news just for that. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It does actually look like a Simpsons version of the statue.
Yeah.
So
Now that you pointed that out to me and I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I vaguely recall this from like The Simpsons and it's worth a ton of money and Homer eats it or something.
okay, that sounds about right. That's pretty. That sounds like Simpsons. Anyway, Jeff, back to magic news.
Fine.
It doesn't really matter. I already talked about it. The Arena Championship number 2 just closed up this last weekend. So congratulations to Hiroshi Onizuka winning with Is It Wizards. Yay. We'll get into that a little bit more in a moment, but tomorrow is Shadows Over Innistrad Remastered. So we can start drafting that and getting some cards for Explorer, which is something we're going to talk about later, because that's what we're most excited for. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to the magic news, Jeff, since you jumped in earlier?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Sick. All right. Let's quickly go over the Arena Championship number 2. For those who didn't get to watch it, it was, what was it, like 9 rounds? Yeah, it was 9 rounds. So it was like 3 Phyrexia All Be One draft, and then 6 rounds of historic with a cut to top 8 single elimination historic matches. We discussed some of our grievances about that format last week. So if you want more of that, go back to last week, because we're going to try to jump back on our positivity train, which for the most part, there were some good things in this tournament. Mainly is that the 2 finalists were not really playing alchemy cards. They had rebalanced versions of other magic cards, so those are alchemy versions, but they weren't playing like digital only ones. Which the top 2 decks were Is It Phoenix and Is It Wizards. So that was like surprising. I was thinking that we're going to see some of those cards we talked about last week all over the place. They were all over the place, but they didn't get to the. I thought they were just going to just beat everybody to the ground and just like sit on the top and be the best. So that was a breath of fresh air to me.
Yeah, apparently Symmetry Sage is the best. So
yeah, the the fixed to mystery stage. So that was surprising, and I kind of like that quite a bit. So
Yeah, me
um,
too. Now, if you look at the whole top eight,
yeah,
yeah, doesn't quite hold up. But yeah, definitely the top two, the finalists. Yeah, that was pretty cool to see.
mhm. Yeah. Not only that, but also proving that expressive iteration is still fucking busted because they
Busted.
of the finalists there were 8 copies of that card.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what needs to be rebalanced. I
Yeah,
don't
how many
know. Maybe.
historic tournaments is this thing gonna fucking win before they rebalance it? I feel like every time I look at a historic, like a high level historic event, it's always a red blue deck that
Yeah.
wins, and it's always just 4 copies of expressive iteration. This brings me back, like all the way back to what was one of the first like big historic tournaments. And Seth Manfield was playing Sultai. His Sultai was like a big deck at the time. And anytime he played against a uh, blue red deck, oh no, he was playing blue red as well. So this must have been like the second one. But
Yeah.
anytime anyone cast expressive iteration, he played any counterspell he had in his
Yeah.
hand on it. And
I
I remember
remember
at the
that.
time
Yeah.
being like, oh, that's kind of weird. Normally you don't counter the card draw or whatever, you counter the big spell they draw off it. But he had identified so early that this card was so good that you just like whatever you have, if you know, if you have a spell pierce, if you have like, even if you had full on counter spell and it can counter anything, he was always throwing it right at expressive iteration. He did very well in that tournament and
Hmm.
very well in the expressive iteration mirror matches. So I think he was on to something.
I'm pretty sure he was. Most of the time, people are casting that to get their land drops. So
Mm-hmm.
that's hey, great
Nice
way
little
to
dinger.
really, really digs it in. Um, Boy. So anyway, uh, not to really dive into that, but more cards that maybe need to be revisited and nerfed a little bit. Maybe we could just play around with that, or just straight banning it because that's nobody else can play that card. So,
Yep.
but anyway, that was cool to see. But Jeff, did first of all, did you get to watch any of the Arena Championship? I know you had said that you were kind of interested in the beginning of it, but maybe not the historic part.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't really watch any of the historic part. I did attempt to watch the limited rounds. I did my best. Luckily, the way I tend to watch these things, because I'll be busy when they're actually live most of the time, is I watch the VODs like at night after my family's gone to bed and right before I go to sleep. So technical difficulties and the like do not affect me as much as live watchers because I just skip through them.
Hmm.
Um, but this was still this was still a lot. Like even watching it later, I was like, what is happening? At one point, I legitimately thought, like, not no joke, this is what I thought they had done. I thought they had like taken a picture, like a screenshot of every pick that the player had available to them,
Oh yeah,
and we're
and
doing like a slideshow for us. I thought that was like for some reason they decided to do it that way because the timer was always
staying the same. Yeah.
frozen and there's no mouse movement. But then it would go to the next slide and you would see their pick would be added to their deck and they would have like a new set of cards. So I was like, I don't know why they chose to do it this way. Maybe they're testing something, but I legitimately thought that's what they were doing. They had like a PowerPoint presentation of someone's draft for me.
Yeah, it was really, really rough. Beginning of coverage was like, I think all the coverage, the commentators, like cameras were always pretty blurry and wonky. Um, Mind you, again, this is like arena coverage, so a lot of people are either at their house or whatever,
Mhm.
and they're still doing the streaming through Discord thing, and it depends on the players, their internet access and stuff. But man, we were watching, I think the first drafter with Death Sea,
Mhm.
um, and their connection with Death Sea, who's a streamer, right? Death Sea's a
Yep.
streamer.
Yeah,
And
he's
so,
a
like,
pretty popular streamer.
you would not expect difficulties or technical difficulties with this person. Um,
Mhm.
and I think it might have just been the connection they had with them, but it was rough. They had to stop. Like they did the first pack and then they had to stop like during the second pack because it was unwatchable. And the
Yeah,
commentators had no idea what was going on and they took a break and they came
that
back.
was the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Um, and there was clearly times when the commentators got out of sync. Their
Hmm.
audio, like they weren't hearing each other live, and then they were responding and then like saying the same thing that somebody had just said
Because
like
yeah,
30 seconds ago. And it was just like, this is it, like, is difficult to watch, not because it's like cringe or it's so bad. It's like confusing to piece together what's happening to watch this. Like it's difficult, it's
mhm,
literally difficult to follow this.
mhm,
This is like a really confusing like movie or something. I'm like, wait, didn't we just talk about that? What is happening right now?
yeah.
And like, how many picks did we just skip? Like, what? What's the deck? What are we at now? Did we go back? Is this a previous pick? Like, it was literally just hard to watch. Like, I
It was
couldn't
it was
follow
very hard
it.
to watch. Luckily, they got their stride a little bit. I was watching it while I was like doing dishes, and I kind of do that like doing errands and housework. I just put it in my headphones and I walk around and do stuff. So I'm not always watching, and I'm just like listening,
Mhm.
and that stuff really gets to me because I'm like,
For sure.
what is the board state? Like I can usually try to remember what's going on, and if that starts to happen, it gets so confusing. I ended up actually switching over to Amazonian's co-stream because she
Mm,
was working fine, so she could kind of talk about what's going on, and that ended up being much better in my opinion. So
interesting.
that helped quite a bit. But yeah, um, it was, I was kind of hoping some of those things would get fixed and they didn't. So um there were some people talking about whether, we've had paper coverage recently and we've had this arena coverage, and you know significantly more people were watching the paper coverage, and is that better or not? I think just the coverage in general, just they do a better job at paper coverage. I think that the board state is easier to understand with the
Mhm.
arena coverage if it ever worked correctly.
Right. If it was ever like literally ever just, you know, working smoothly with no lag or anything,
Yeah.
um, it's way easier to parse. Like you can imagine where there's a high budget alternative reality here where everything works smoothly, and as the watcher I can hover over a card and it will zoom up
Hmm.
and it will show me that card, right? Like if you watch somebody's stream, this happens, that technology is available. If we were in like Magic, Wizards committed to making really high budget like arena streams, that would be a thing, and it would just be much much better than watching paper.
Hmm.
As it stands, they're obviously not committed to that, and
Yeah.
so they just have like a lot more experience doing paper coverage, and they have all of the equipment that had already invested in for
Hmm.
paper coverage that they whip out for these paper tournaments, right? um, so it's like arena is pretty much like just better. It's just a better viewing experience. But I found the Pro Tour to be a way better viewing experience than the Arena Championship.
Yep, I agree. Especially when players don't get disconnected from their matches and lose really important games to get into the top eight, like we
Now I'm
saw
just
in this tournament.
imagining like two players sitting down and one player's about to like bolt the opponent for three, and he's like, "What? Sorry, I can't." No,
And they're just like, okay, I guess I'll just take my turn. And like that's literally like the commercial that they would make for it. And they're like,
exactly.
come to
Yeah,
the pro tour,
yeah.
don't worry about that ever again. Um, so that just it is what it is, but it's happened so many times that it just feels like nothing is changed. It's like we're watching the same stuff during like that's like league weekend things that we watched
Yeah.
years ago. So Anyway, that makes me kind of sad, a little disappointed. But congratulations to Hiroshi. It's great to watch you. It was cool to see all the kind of like newer folks. So that was awesome. Really, really happy for them.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. And it looks like overall it's kind of a cool tournament. Like a lot of the good players, a lot of the players who always win keep
mhm.
winning.
Yep.
But still some new, fresh faces in there as well. You mentioned Deathsy. It was cool to see him there because
Hmm.
I just know he's a big, like, limited only streamer. I don't know if they've changed that, but like when I knew them, they were limited only.
Hmm.
And they drafted interestingly, I'll say. I mean, I know Deathsy's done hundreds, if not thousands, of drafts, so they definitely have their own analysis of the format, but there were a lot of picks that I was like, what?
Whoa. Yeah.
What is happening here? Um, and so it kind of reminds me of Arena Championship 1, where or no, the World Championships. Was it the World Championships? Where they followed a drafter who made some odd choices and was doing this like wacky, very dirtily multicolored deck with splashing for different things. And then that player didn't do that well in the draft. And you look at like who 3-0'd it, and it's just like Boros beat you down.
Hmm.
Like, same exact thing in this
Yep.
tournament. But
Yeah,
uh,
it seems like the people that they like to choose to do the draft coverage are always the people that want to do something interesting. And I don't know if it's also like they get in their head and they're like, "Oh, I'm on coverage, so I should draft this like more interesting
yeah,
deck."
yeah. I wonder
Um,
how much that factors in. But
yeah,
you think Death CP, like,
that's true.
he's
That's
used to
true.
being watched at
Yeah,
least.
so I doubt that's his problem. But anyway, always good to see some competitive magic. So wonderful. Though tomorrow, or sorry, I keep saying tomorrow, but like that doesn't mean anything to you. No matter how many times,
Yesterday.
yeah, we make this podcast, I'll always screw up that. So anyway, Shadows over Innistrad has come out since this podcast has come out. And that means we get a bunch new cards in Arena, primarily Explorer is what we're going to be talking about. But yeah, Jeff, are there any cards that you're really excited about? I know I have a story about at least one. So, um,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
but I know
So
you're chomping at the bit a little bit. So I'll hand it over to you.
yes. Yeah. So this set is or block, I guess.
Yeah.
Half block, whatever this is called. Um, it's kind of special to me in a sense that, like, the way I've always played is basically build these wacky decks around cards that it was originally motivated by cards that aren't expensive but still good. So you want to find a rare that you could build a deck around. It's good enough to play, but it's not going to cost you. Your deck's not going to cost hundreds of dollars for a standard event, because I just wasn't willing to invest that. And so what I would do, but I wanted to play competitively, right? So I'd show up to all of these like PTQs and like went to Grand Prix and stuff like that with like really wacky just decks that I've completely brewed myself. And this set was like the pinnacle of that. That was when I was at my most like janky competitiveness, in the sense that like this is when I not only did the best but also built some of the weirdest, like wackiest decks that I remember the most fondly.
Hmm.
Um, and I think trying to think of the timing, but I'm pretty sure I had just moved to Toronto, or I was like in my second year maybe, but I think I had just moved to Toronto.
Hmm.
And I went to Grand Prix Shadows over Innistrad. And boy, that the deck that I brought to that was wacky. And I was one win off of day two.
Uh,
uh, which was a bummer, but it was like a long day. I think I started off 3 or 4-0, and I was like, what is happening? And then I played against some pro player on, like, at that time green white tokens was like the best deck in the format.
hmm.
And they really put me back in my place. I was starting to think like maybe I
uh,
solved it, maybe I have the real deck. Then I played against this person, just got absolutely annihilated. I was like, okay, that makes more sense. Now we're back where I was expecting to be.
yeah.
um, but yeah, I just love this set. Not necessarily because like it has a lot of really great cards or cards that I just had a lot of fun building a lot of wacky decks and taking them to PTQs and almost getting there. I never actually like spike to tournament. But I did surprisingly well given like some of the cards that you'll hear me talk about some of the cards I was legitimately playing in competitive standard events. So uh, when you hear some of the cards I was playing, I think everyone will be impressed that I was able to not lose every match.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so excited because like this is a set that I didn't play very much of. I think at the time I was playing um, Magic Duels, I think was on my phone. And so I was playing that and just kind of playing cards that I owned on there. Um, which was actually, I think the deck I was playing was just like a really like a popper version of like a steel sack Rakdos steel sack deck, um, which is the first time I was playing that, which is a lot of fun. But you did mention the green white tokens deck, which I'm pretty sure got first place by Steve Rubin at the Pro Tour Shadows of Innistrad. So it would make sense that that would just, yeah, if you go up against the best deck, sometimes you just get wrecked. But
and that this GP was right after that Pro Tour, or like shortly after, I
gotcha.
think.
Hmm.
So that was like the deck to beat.
Yeah, which makes sense. I also was just looking up this Pro Tour, which was like in April of that year, and like the top eight, I talked about Steve Rubin, but Andrea Mengucci got second. Seth Manfield, Shota Yasaoka, John Finkel, Brad Nelson, Luis Scott
Yeah, it was a
Vargas,
crazy one.
and Luis Silvato was the top eight. That is insane. I cannot believe that top eight. Especially
Yeah,
because I know every single player except for Steve Rubin. I don't
I know,
know.
and
I don't
he
know.
won.
You know what? But that was kind of fun to see, to kind of look back and try to figure out what cards were the exciting, fun ones. But um, Jeff, like, just give me just. I really want to know what this wacky deck is, though, and I'm pretty sure everybody else
Oh,
does too. So
there's so many. There's so many.
yeah.
Um, so the first thing I want to say,
Mhm.
there's going to be a bit of a game that we're going to have to play today, and that game is, was this card already on Arena or not? Because
Yes.
the most disappointing or the weirdest thing about Shadows over Innistrad is there are so many, when I'm just looking through it, like iconic cards here. But because of that, they added so many of them to Arena already that I don't know if I'm excited for some cards because it may already be on Arena. I legitimately don't know. So we're going to be playing a bit of that game. There are a few I'm like, okay, Gitrog Monster, Tireless Tracker. I know that stuff's already there.
Mhm.
But then I look at some other cards. I'm like, is this already on Arena? Is it
I
not? Is this new? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I've been playing this game a lot myself, and so I
Yeah.
think I have a couple down. Specifically, like Mausoleum Wanderer and like Rattle Chains. Those are on Arena, but like I know
Yeah.
Selfless Spirit isn't, right? I think so. So those are the kind of things. I'll try to help you out.
Okay.
I'll do the quick search.
Um, all right. So I'll start with that. I mean, this card just has to be talked about, but I'll start with, this is the deck I played in GP Toronto when I
Hmm.
first got here. Came to GP Toronto, you know, green white tokens, best deck in the format. Then there was like green black seasons past. I want to say it was a big deck, and like black white. There's this black white mid range, or I think it was called black white control at the time. Um,
Hmm.
that was just planeswalkers. It was like planeswalkers and Avacyn, and just like
Hmm.
that was the control deck of the format. And I showed up with Sultai. I went through a bit of a Sultai phase. So
Hmm.
I showed up with Sultai, Brain in a Jar, Reanimator.
Yes.
So obviously, I'm very excited for Brain in a Jar. Um, I think Brain in a Jar was a rare when.
Yes. So this is a good point because Brain in a Jar was a rare. It was also one of the
Okay.
cards I was playing on duels. So I'm really like
Hey,
it
we
was a
were
card
both
that,
playing this card.
yeah, mine was probably not nearly as cool. But as we go through some of these cards, they have downshifted a bunch of them to uncommon, which is thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah.
hear you, I
Um,
see you, arena devs or whoever's deciding this. Thank you so much.
most notably, the lands.
Yeah. Like and
Those
just
those lands suck. They're
yeah.
uncommon power level lands.
It's just a lot of like Yeah, the so our snarls are rares,
The
but like
pre-snarls,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so the show me lands, those are all uncommon, and there's a couple other just like utility things or fun cards that are just downshifted from rare.
Mhm.
It's just that's what you need to do. This is perfect. Thank you. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
Jeff. Continue.
So Brain in a Jar. Brain in a Jar is a 2-mana artifact. For the weirdos in the audience who don't know what Brain in a Jar does, it's a 2-mana artifact. You can pay 1 and tap it to put a charge counter on it, and then you can cast an instant or sorcery with mana value equal to the number of charge counters on it from your hand without paying its mana cost. Then you can tap 3 and remove X charge counters from it to scry X. So the idea is
Yeah.
like you tick this thing up and you keep playing spells for free. And then when you have too many counters, you activate it to remove some of them to get you back down into the zone that you wanted. Basically, I was just using this as like, it's literally just kind of a value engine, but the basic idea was mostly just my deck was big, expensive, like sorceries, and you needed a way to do 2 things in one turn because it was too easy to interact with just doing one. And you needed also early game plays. So you'd slip out the Brain in a Jar, and then you'd slowly do this thing where you're like casting 2 spells in a turn. So that was basically what Brain in a Jar was doing in the deck. And the whole goal of this deck was to reanimate. And your main reanimation target was a card called Living Lore. And Living Lore was actually from Dragons of Tarkir. So before this set, what it does is it exiles an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. It gets the power and toughness of that card's mana value.
Yeah.
And then when it deals damage, you can sack it and cast that spell for free. Then there was a card called Temporal Trespass.
Yeah. Okay.
And so basically what you would do is you'd reanimate Living Lore on Temporal Trespass, which had a CMC of 11, and you would attack them for 11 and then take an extra turn off casting the Temporal Trespass for free. And then in classic fashion, it had a crap load of other like weird one-of value reanimation targets, and then like 4 Jace Vryn's Prodigy to flashback your reanimation.
Oh my
I think its
gosh.
greatest strength was nobody had any idea how the deck worked or even how Living Lore worked, because people misplayed around Living Lore constantly because they just didn't know what the card did or how it worked at all.
I had never seen, I just looked it up. I had never seen that card ever.
So you just have to just think of the cards that I just listed as being part of this deck. Nobody had ever played against any of them except Jace Vryn's Prodigy. And everyone was like, all I know what to do is to kill the Jace, but everything else I don't know how to like interact with. Do I kill the Brain in the Jar? Does that matter? Do I block Living Lore? Do I let it hit me? What do I do with this thing?
Yeah. Oh, because Living Lore, when it deals any combat damage,
Any damage.
it doesn't have to be the opponent. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And you would often reanimate Living Lore and get your reanimation spell and then just like reanimate something again. Like there were all these weird value loops and stuff that were like, in classic fashion, just working way too hard to accomplish what they're accomplishing, but it was super fun. And yeah. Yeah. And then I just had I think I had a Singleton Seasons Pass, because sometimes you might want to get that with your Living Lore and cast that, and then you grab all your shit back. And and you want different mana values for Brain in a Jar as well. So this was a really wacky deck. It had a bunch of like fun of one-ofs. The only pretty sure the only cards that were like more than 2 copies were Brain in a Jar, Jace, Living Lore, and Temporal Trespass. I was probably playing Dig Through Time.
Yeah.
I think I was probably playing Dig Through Time.
That would probably make sense.
Because that was also, actually, Temporal Trespass was probably like 1 or 2 copies, and then Dig Through Time was really what you wanted to hit off the Living Lore.
Yeah, makes sense. Wow, that is... I am so excited for the Brain in the Jar decks, especially because they're going to be super cheap, because I probably have a lot of the cards, and the Brain in the Jars, aren't going to cost anything. So Amazing.
Yeah, I don't even know if Brain in the Jar should have been in that deck, so I'm not calling here that Brain in the Jar is gonna crack
It just reminded
Explorer,
you.
but yeah, I just saw this card. I was like, yeah,
Oh, I mean,
nice.
like, I don't think, no, I definitely didn't think Brandon are cracked Explorer, but like, can you actually build a deck? Like, would it be fun, or would you just get
Yeah,
like wrecked all the time?
I mean, I'm reading it now, and I'm like, this is pretty bad. Why was this even in that deck?
It's a little slow. Um, I think I was using it just like in a is it deck to like double spell so I could play Surge cards. That was about it.
That's what it
Um,
does, right? It
yeah.
helps you double spell on decks that like desperately need that.
Hmm.
But I don't know if it's still enough. It's worth it necessarily.
Yeah. I'm not super sure either, but as we're talking about this, I do want to say one thing. All right, so as a remastered set, you know, we're taking the best of the cards from Eldritch Moon and Shadows over Innistrad, putting them together and trying to, get rid of some of the ones that don't need to be, we don't need to spend time on certain cards. So there are a couple question marks for me that I don't know if they just added them for draft, maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
like, we have like Field Creeper, which is a 2 mana 2/1 Scarecrow. What's that about?
Yeah.
Like, is it? I guess okay, for sure. If you like scarecrows, whatever. But there's also like a 2 mana 3/1 vanilla fox that's in white, and it's just like here's a common. I don't know. I know it's for draft. I get that, but wasn't there a different 2 drop that was like aggressive and cool that like, or is it just like, oh, let's just throw? I don't know how much time it takes
No,
to
it
develop
has
each
to be the
card, and
fox.
but just like it's just kind of confusing because of the 2 sets, I would just assume there might be something. Instead, I think what I was expecting is that looking at the card image gallery, that there would be 0 vanilla creatures, and in fact, I was wrong. There are more than 0. There are several. So that's my
Yeah,
own little
there's a bunch.
question mark, but not a huge problem. Just interesting. Um, though that kind of leads me into I do want to talk about this card fairly early because there's actually an article that came out about it today that I read. It was really interesting. And it's about Emrakul, the Promised End. Um, so this is a card coming to Arena, and it's a big deal because this has an effect that we have never seen before. Um, we don't have any cards on Arena that does this. And so they had to decide whether they're going to spend a lot of time actually implementing this ability. However, Emrakul is such a big part of like Eldritch Moon packaging and the symbol of the set, and it was on all these
Yeah.
articles, and it just kind of felt like you had to um, put it in there. And the ability I'm talking about is that you get to take the other, like you gain control of
Mm-hmm.
your opponent's turn. Um, and there are cards that in Magic's history that let you take other people's turns. Um, but this is the first one we see for Arena,
Right.
and because they were saying there wasn't a big card in Pioneer and it wasn't probably going to be competitive, the developers had decided they weren't going to spend the resources trying to implement this card because it was going to apparently take a lot of time.
Right.
And in the end, some people had figured out some shortcuts and things had worked out, and they did decide to add it to the set. But overall, I don't know if you knew about this, but like, what are your first impressions if this card image gallery came out and Emrakul was not part of it? Would that give you like strong bad emotions?
Yeah. So I didn't know about this, but now that you say it, that makes total sense. Like just imagining, I get to take control of my opponent's turn here. Um, that does sound like a bit of a development nightmare. Um, I'm glad they did figure it out though. If this was missing, I think the most likely outcome I'd be like, where the fuck is Emrakul? And then you would say, oh, it's it's a lot for them to program in that ability and nobody plays it. I'd be like, okay, I guess, but I'm still bummed.
Hmm.
Um, so when I saw it revealed, it was just a no-brainer to me. So now I'm just thinking about that now that this was probably highly non-trivial to get
Hmm.
onto Arena. The other thing is like Arena kind of needs a big bad. I want to flat like what do you call it? Like It's the sneak attack is what I'm thinking
Oh.
about. I want to like sneak attack this.
Mhm.
Um, and you're just dead. Like it has big creatures that like, oh, I want to reanimate and its value like Atraxa, but it kind of needs that you're dead. Uh,
Mhm.
and Emrakul's, you know, original Emrakul's the classic for that because it's like, okay, take 15, sack all your permanents.
Mhm.
Um, this is like pretty good though. It's a close second of like take 13. Uh, you know,
It's
like
just a 13 mana 13/13 with flying and trample and protection for an instance.
that's
That's
right.
not
Yeah.
that's whatever.
Eh.
Well, the other thing is that like this Emrakul costs one less for each different card type among cards in your graveyard, and we're about to get a new card type with battles. So it seems like
True.
that's exactly the kind of thing you want to have. Like you want
Yeah, this had
people
to be here.
trying to build and play this card because it was also a big card in standard at the time when these sets came out. So
Yeah.
um, I think that I would have been really disappointed and I would have wanted the developers to work harder to get it on Arena because my end goal is having every card in Pioneer on Arena. So it would feel so weird if this huge one was gone, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and now, of course, when I say every card, I also mean the weird, like, vanilla creatures or whatever. But like, give us all of the cards, not just like cherry pick the shitty vanilla ones and leave out something else. Now, I don't
Yeah.
have an example of what that card would be, so this isn't really a good argument. But I'm really happy that they did end up deciding to do all the work on Emrakul, even though I want them
Yes.
to do work on fixing the arena client so we can have spectator mode so we can watch it in tournaments and stuff like that. So if there was a trade-off, like, oh, you either get Emrakul or you get spectator mode, I mean, I hope that wasn't the amount of effort they had to put in for Emrakul. But
Yeah.
I think more work onto arena is good because it needs just, you know, help all the time. Give us more resources. But that's my little thing with that.
Yeah. The other thing is like, you know, on the whole, people don't play it in Pioneer thing. I don't necessarily think that should be like our, you know, North Star that we're following or whatever is get all the cards people play currently in Pioneer
Exactly.
because it's evolving, first of all. So like by the time you finish, what people play in Pioneer is different than when you started
Mm-hmm.
because this is going to be a long journey. But also like I like the idea that this could bring new decks to Pioneer because people were kind of forced to play with cards they wouldn't normally play with
Mm-hmm.
in Pioneer by playing Explore. So I understand that sometimes you have to make tough decisions, but like I just don't like that as a argument. I wish they'd choose something else as a reason for including or not including a card. And I think like, hey, it's a development nightmare is kind of a valid reason, but
Mm-hmm.
like we could get this out later or something. I don't know. This has to be here though, I feel like. And the other thing I wanted to say is one of the first pro tours was won by Sultai Delirium in Pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
And this card was in that deck. I think they ended up cutting it as the deck like evolved, but like this did win a Pioneer Pro Tour, so it's not like
Oh.
it's a total nobody in Pioneer. And I think that Sultai Delirium deck still has chops. Like I know it was only as good as it was because of Uro, but it's still like when I compare it to what the mid-range mono red or red black deck that people are playing now, it's like that was a better mid-range deck than red black. It's just that it was slower, so it can't kill the combo decks quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
so red black's like the mid-range deck of choice because it might be able to go under the combo decks. Whereas I don't think Delirium really has that kind of speed.
Yeah.
But the Delirium deck would probably beat the crap out of the red black deck. So it's not like it's a totally nothing. You know, this was a old deck that doesn't have legs anymore. It's like
Mm-hmm.
no, Sultai Delirium definitely you can still build that deck just because it doesn't have Uro. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with, like, I know you have your own, you know, agenda with Dubious Challenge, but like skipping cards that people don't play is not the spirit of Magic or formats in general. So um
yeah, and
doing
Dubious Challenge, like honestly, I get it. Like that's if there's a card you think nobody will play, that's something you could put on the sidelines. Obviously, we can't make every card, but that should be what we're thinking about. Would people play this? And I don't like that the proxy for that is, do people currently play it in Pioneer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Because I don't think that's the same question.
You really don't want a weird, like a card like Emrakul to be like soft banned and Explorer, because that's like, you can't play it because we can't put it on the thing.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I think Saffron Olive was just talking about today a little bit about it being like, if MTGO can figure out how to do all these things, Arena should be able to do it. Like, that's like a super old like system, and our new fancy, nice looking one should be able to do all that stuff. So, anyway, that's my little just a thing. If nobody realized that, it was quite interesting. Also, there's like a summit, I think tomorrow on Discord, just with the devs talking about how they get cards onto Arena. So I might actually pop in to listen to that.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah,
because I want to know where their heads at, or where their heads are at for getting like Battle for Zendikar block and Magic Origins and Tarkir, and what
I'm
I know.
hoping BFC block's just too hard to program, so we skip it.
It just, oh, I know. I mean, like I don't hate it as much as you do, but I just want
at least skip both of the Gatewatch. Come on.
I just want all the things as fast as possible, basically. So, but anyway, that's Emrakul. I am excited to see what it looks like when you do take control of your opponent's turn. Is it going to be like tentacles come out and like hit the battlefield and then spin it, and so then you're on the other side?
Oh damn, that'd be cool.
That'd be pretty cool. Anyway, that's just my idea. I don't know. I'm not. I don't work at Wizards. I don't know, but that would
maybe
be
you should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, Jeff, I think I have a couple more sips, so we could talk about probably one more card and then go on a beer break.
Just one more. Oh my
God. Just for now. We'll get the rest of them afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I did really want to talk about Devilthorn Fox, but you already kind of covered that one. So how excited I was for Devilthorn Fox, but you kind of ruined that one for me. So, okay, here's a fun one. Decimator of the Provinces. Was this card already on Arena?
Let's take it out.
I don't think so.
No. It can't be, because it has emerged.
Because it has emerged. Yeah, okay. I knew I was safe with this one. So this is a card for those who don't know. It's 10 mana, 10 colorless mana for a 7/7 Eldrazi board. It has emerged 6 green, which means you can pay that cost and also like sacrifice creatures to lower that cost. And then when you cast it, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn, and it has trample and haste itself. So I've always really liked the design of this card, because first it like harkens back to the card that everybody loves, which is that I'm forgetting the name of it, but Craterhoof Behemoth, which was like so outrageously pushed on the numbers on that. Why is it +X for every creature, guys? What were you thinking? But anyways, just like you only need like 4 creatures for this to be absurdly lethal. Maybe 3 is enough. Anyways, this card is like clearly in the same spirit as that, but I really like the idea that like, sure, you could turbo power this out, but then you probably sacked all your creatures and like the ability isn't that good. So it's like a nice give and take kind of thing. Now, I had a sweet deck with this thing. Let me tell you about it.
Okay.
So, this deck was built around a card called Cryptolith, right? Let me go see if that card is here. It is indeed here. So we can talk about that one as well. Cryptolith, right? 1 in a green enchantment. Creatures you control tap to add 1 mana of any color. And then there was Beast. Was it Beast Callers? It was like an artifact that whenever you played a creature, you could pay a green mana to draw a card. Beast Caller's something.
I don't see it, but keep going, keep going.
It's not in this. I don't think it's in this remastered. But so you could draw a card every time you play a creature. And then the final piece of the puzzle was an absolute beauty that Commander players everywhere are huge, huge fans of. And that's called Paradox Engine. So what you would do is, and then the rest of your deck was creatures, token makers, the usual. So when you have Cryptolith out, all of your creatures tap for mana. Paradox Engine untaps them whenever you draw a card or whenever you cast something. And whenever you cast something, you draw a card from the Beast Callers, Life Caller's Bestiary.
That's what it is. Called. Yeah. It's Kaladesh. Yeah. Or
yes. Yes. So basically, what the deck did is just like vomit out its hand and then just draw cards and play creatures. And then eventually, I needed a way to win. Excuse me, because this combo could go off and build a huge board, but then you needed to like untap. And so this was the win con for that. So eventually you would just like draw through your whole deck. Eventually you'd draw this thing, you'd play it for free, and you'd just like smash them in the face for 1 billion damage. And it was a super, super fun deck. It was all in, completely all in. Like it would fold to, there were easy ways to like beat this deck. You can interact with this for sure. But game one was always so fun because it'd just be like, play this, okay, play this, and you just do like nothing for a couple of turns, and it's like, okay, you're dead because for some reason you let me untap with one creature. I don't know why you were thinking that would be okay. Cryptolith, right? And you're dead. So I've just always had a bit of a soft spot for Decimator of the Provinces. I like the design of it, and I think it's like fixed Crater Hoof. It might be overly fixed, might be too far the other way, and they had like a third version, right? Semi recently.
It was in like Ravnica or something. It was like a gruel pig.
And that one actually like won. Didn't Andrea win the first like mythic championship with that card? So that was like probably just the right power level. He had that's the right power level of like big pig that gives your whole team haste and some trample. Sort of bonus. But this one has a soft spot in my heart for while everyone else is doing all these crazy normal things, I'm just trying to like vomit out my hand and play a Decimator of the Provinces as quickly as possible.
That's nice. I do like that. Though, you know, the card that I'm gonna want to play is just the Thalia, and so they all come into play tapped.
Yeah, that would own this deck. Like that could have no chance against Thalia.
I guess like technically they could untap with the engine though, so but it would put a damper on things for sure. But yeah, also Paradox Engine is banned in Commander, so because they loved it so much. So
that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, Jeff, we do have quite a few more cards to talk about, and some more just exciting ideas for explorers. So let's go on a beer break, grab some more beer, and get back at it.
Let's do it.
All right. Cheers. This beer break is brought to you by our patrons over on Patreon.
That's right. You're already supporting the show just by listening, but if you want to support the show even more, Patreon is the best way to do that. Plus, you get to vote on your favorite co-host by clicking the big Buy Jeff a Beer button.
Or the big Buy Zach a Beer button. So go to patreon.com/arena regulars to vote on your favorite host.
You got to get that button removed. Too many people are clicking it. If you'd rather send us beer emojis, you can do so on the Arena Regulars Discord channel. The link is in the show notes.
Yes, it is right below. And I got another beer for us. This one is called Steeplejack. Sorry, that's the brewery. Steeplejack Beer Brewery. Wow, that 7% Gummy Venus really got me. We're getting there. We're getting there. Let's start that again. So the brewery is Steeplejack, and the beer is their tropical stout. They also claim it's a real ale.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I was hoping it was. This is 6.6%, and Steeplejack is over in Portland, Oregon. So I was able to actually visit this brewery while I was there. It was pretty sweet. It's in this church, and so that's why it has all the church kind of iconography on it.
Makes
And
sense.
yeah, just a giant building, perfect for drafting. Talking about places to go and play games, this just has big honking like full wooden tables, and like the service is literally just your phone. Like you do the QR code, you order what you want, and then you just
Oh,
order
nice.
it,
Yeah.
and it goes on your card, and they come by to drop it off, and that's it. So no one's coming in to interrupt your game or anything. Um, it was
I feel like
awesome.
sushi restaurants were like the first people to really adopt that technology.
Yeah, like hey, you don't want to talk to me, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Just order on
This
your
is this
phone.
is mutual. Yeah,
Yeah.
just
So
punch it all in and I'll bring it out.
yeah, so that was awesome. Anyway, big fan. So go check them out. But let's see how this beer is. Let's crank it. Oh man.
Reminds me of Silversmith for some reason in aesthetic, because they were kind of
Mhm.
like a church converted to a brewery kind of thing as well.
Yeah, yeah. That seems in Toronto specifically. They have a ton of like churches converted into bars or
Yeah.
anthropology or whatever.
They
So
converted a church into anthropology.
yeah, there's one on Queen Street.
Huh.
Um, but anyway, so that is like the thing. But this one's pretty sweet, and also a really nice space to go to. So I definitely recommend it. Awesome, Jeff. As we get into this, actually, I should probably talk about the next cards because you talked about something right before the break, and
Sure.
as usual, the cards I want to talk about are no surprise to anyone. Um, I alluded to some of it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to kind of clump the cards together just so we can, kill two birds with one stone. But Selfless Spirit and
Mm.
Spell Queller are two cards that when I was playing Bant Spirits, I really needed, and they were the only two cards I didn't have on Arena to practice the deck. And so them being added is huge for that. Now, that deck has kind of fallen out of favor, and company decks in general are not really like popping off these days. But I'm still excited to grab all the copies I can of that and like try it again and get into it because I have the cards and paper. So it's like, having it around and practicing it and seeing like maybe I could make a build that will work out is interesting. So I'm excited for those, and just having Spell Queller around at all makes company decks a bit more interesting because we also have what's his face Reflector Mage, because that was in one of the like last anthologies, I think.
Mhm.
So having both of those cards is when I started watching Bant company decks, like at all. Those are the two cards I remember the most, and those are the ones that made me want to play Collected Company at all. When I'm going watching old PT coverage and stuff, and so
That
that
deck was busted.
yeah, so whether it's going to be actually a full spirits build, or it's just going to be like company decks, that is definitely like Spell Queller is huge. I think it's just huge to have like that creature deck have the possibility of like a removal spell or a counter spell. I mean, sorry. Um,
Spell Queller is just like a good card to have like to have be in your format too,
mhm,
because what happens in these formats with is the creature decks often just get edged out because they're just playing creatures and either get too overrun by the combo decks, or like they just don't have any interaction because they have to play all creatures. So Spell Queller is like a card that gives these creature decks a fighting chance, and it's just really well designed. Like it's powerful, but it's not outrageous.
mhm.
Like if I kill this, I get my spell back, can only do mana value 4 or less, etc. Like they have all the right numbers tuned here, it feels like, for this card to be good and a huge boon for creature decks, but not so good that you have to play creature decks kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's just a good thing to have kicking around your format, even if it never sees any play. It's still like
having access to it, and I think that's going to be the theme of a lot of this episode. Is just like having access to cards that we haven't had. It's so exciting because, as I said the whole time, I want all of them. Like, let us play with all the cards. I think that's going to make
Selfless Spirit. I don't really care about it, whatever. But
I love cards like that. Selfless Spirit, so nice. But yeah, Spellqueller for sure. But Jeff, I do want to actually know your feelings. So we are getting, what's her fucking face? She's the main angel. Okay, Archangel Avacyn. That's her name.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember the first part of it. But I don't know if she's actually going to make waves or do anything, but like I'm kind of clumping it into the rest of the deck because these decks also played Avacyn. Yep. So
that was like the top end.
Yeah. So and it's like the one creature that you can't get with your collected company, but you kind of have those. A lot of the game states are like you have 5 mana untapped on your opponent's end step, and they're like, are they going to collected company? Like on their turn, they're like, do I wipe the board, and then like will they just play collected company afterwards, or are they going to play Avacyn in response to the board wipe, things like that. And so they're trying to like wipe and have a removal spell to kill Avacyn with the trigger on the stack and all that stuff. So it just seems that's another card I'm excited for, but I also didn't play with it really at all, and I know you played against it. Is this a card that you're excited to have in the format, or is it just kind of like not really going to make it?
I don't think it's good enough. This card was very good in standard. Mm-hmm. I think it's just I'm just questioning this in Explorer. The only thing I'll say is like the guessing game of do they have collected company or Avacyn that you were alluding to was like what made this as strong as it was in that Bant company deck. Both are really good against board wipes, obviously, but they were good in sort of different ways. And so it was always a guessing game of like, do a board wipe if they have collected company, they're going to get 2 creatures and replenish their board on end step. If they have Avacyn, I literally lose the game. So it's like part of the reason this was there was that guessing game. It was another flash threat that was different from Coco. And so because I know you've played a lot of these decks, or at least enough of these decks to know against them, sorry. When a creature deck like this passes with 4 mana up, it's just like, well, they have Coco. Like it's 100% because everything else in their deck is castable and sorcery speed, and they would have played it. So it's just like such a tell. And there was something to, okay, it could be Coco, it could be Avacyn.
Well, those are the other reasons why I like things like Spellqueller and stuff, where it's like more flash threats that hide your Coco, I guess.
Spellqueller goes a long way with that too. Because currently on Arena, it's like you're playing against elves or something like Coco deck. You're like, wait, well, you so obviously have Coco. I shall pass with Spell Pierce up. Like,
yeah.
And Spell Pierce not very good against Archangel Avacyn. So it just made it hard. This deck was sort of its trademark was being really difficult to play against because all of its creatures do different things, and you never know which 2 are going to show up off the Coco. And then it could be Avacyn, it could be Coco. So it was also quite difficult to pilot properly, to give it some credit there. It wasn't like, oh, it's just super easy to play. You just smash face and I mean, sometimes it was. You just reflector mage, and you win. But like when to Coco, as I think you also discovered with the Spirits deck that you were playing and stuff like that, it's not super trivial, which is why I kind of like it. I like when the creature deck isn't just, well, I vomit out my hand and do my best to play around a board wipe. So this deck was very hard to play against, and Avacyn was one of the huge reasons why.
So this is coming from me watching too much old coverage of stuff and being excited by a lot of these cards.
I think there's not enough like Wrath of Gods. If Blue White Control was super popular and it was playing like Supreme Verdicts and stuff, and that was one of the ways that creature decks got wrecked,
Mhm.
I'd be a lot more in favor of Archangel Avacyn. It's just like that's not really what's going on in the format. People aren't really just casting Wrath of God
That's true.
type effects.
So
So
once again, just another card that to keep in your back pocket for when Azorius
yeah,
Control
because
ever comes
it's
back, if it does.
that's where this card was truly just like, what am I supposed to do? Because you're sitting there, you're like, well, they have a huge board. I have to cast my Wrath. If they have Avacyn, I lose. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's how so many games ended. And they always have Avacyn. So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, if it's like farewell, like okay, you get a 4/4 after I farewell.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the end of the world kind of thing. Um, it's much worse than my entire board stays alive and you're dead.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, once again, just I am in this funny space where like I'm looking at a lot of these cards. I'm like, if they're rare, I have to like really want them. But if they're mythic, yeah, I can pick up a couple of those. That's not too bad.
Yeah, it's
Just with
funny how that works, right?
yeah. So looking at some
Like,
of these
oh, it's a
cards,
mythic.
yeah,
Oh,
it's like oh mythics,
maybe I will just craft a couple of those.
whatever. Yeah.
At least it's not a rare. Whew.
Yeah, geez, rares are so hard to come by these days. Thank God
Okay,
they're
so
downshifting some of them to uncommon, but
yeah. So there was a card I wanted to ask you about.
mhm.
So let's just get to it.
Okay.
And this is a card that may or may not already be on Arena. See, I
All right,
never know with
perfect.
this set. Okay.
Yeah.
The card is Sigarda's Aid.
Okay, I looked this
Is
one up earlier.
okay, is this a card you're familiar with?
I am very familiar with this card. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It seems like you might have never heard of it, so let me read it for you. So this is a 1-mana enchantment, and it says you may cast aura and equipment spells as though they had flash, and then whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control. Now, I think the main use case for this is to try to put equipment on the map. Like part of equipment's problem is it's so slow
Mhm.
that it's just never worth doing in
Yeah.
uh, competitive environments, which is why when equipment does make it in, it always cheats on something like Embercleave. You didn't have to
Mhm.
actually pay to equip it.
And it was flash speed, but
Yeah, so it's this.
and
It just had
yeah,
this on it.
yeah, and it reduced its cost.
But this makes all of your equipment into Embercleave,
Yeah.
so um, that's pretty good. And I know in like this is a real thing in Modern where they just play the
Mhm.
Colossus Hammer.
Hammer
That's
time,
like a real
hammer
deck. Yeah,
time. Yeah,
it was like legitimately the best deck in the format for a little while, and I think it's still
it's
considered good.
every time Mangu puts out like his tiers of modern, I always like Manguchi's just awesome. Like if you don't follow him
Yeah,
on like Twitter, Instagram, do it because
yeah, you should check him out.
he either posts like sweet stuff about magic or like the amazing food that he's eating. So
Oh yeah,
he
Menguchi cuisine.
oh god, so good. But every I don't play modern. I don't know anything about modern, but I still stop and like look at his like modern and legacy tier things.
Mhm.
And I do notice that Hammer Time is like close to the top, if not top tier or usually second tier. So,
Yeah,
because that's a deck I would want to play. Sounds awesome.
and this is why I ask you. So
Yes.
in Explore, is there a chance we see a Sigarda's Aid deck either as like I don't know, maybe you could sneak this into Aura's sideboard or something to help give you some game against to give you some instant speed. Um, but mostly I'm thinking, do we have like can we do a hammer time kind of thing? It's like
I think that so first off, this card I was so certain it was already on Arena because
it's not.
I swear it was on Arena and it's
Yeah,
not. Um,
that's why I was like, I'm gonna ask him about it, but I'm pretty sure it's already on Arena.
That's what
So
I thought too. So
yeah,
much so because I looked it up on Scryfall. No, didn't have a thing. I don't know. I went on my phone. I even looked it up there,
went
and
on Arena.
Yeah, went on Arena. Sure enough, could not find it. But I could have swore this card was already on Arena. Um, so, but yeah, I think um, this card is it's one of my favorites. It's definitely something I would try if somebody had a list up. I would like if that's a I would put wild cards into a card like this because I really like it. As far as like putting into auras, it's really difficult because it doesn't work with your other um uh, any of your creatures that care about auras being cast, like your card advantage engines.
Hmm.
Sigarda's aid doesn't do it's just like an extra thing. So and then drawing multiples of it is really bad. So because they don't replace themselves like the rest of your auras do. Because there's usually a certain point where like you don't even care what it is. You're happy that it's an aura. Um, so I would think it's probably not the best thing, but equipment deck that is much more interesting. And trying some sort of hammer time thing in Explorer would be great. I know it's not something that's happening in Pioneer really, but maybe Explorer is light enough. We don't have Lotus Field yet, so maybe we'll be able to do something with it. I don't know. I don't know what would keep us back from that. Probably Rakdos just wrecking your any target you ever play ever. But um, I you could try. I definitely would
There
try.
might be something. I don't know what equipment you would play, but yeah.
The any I obviously Colossal Hammer and maybe creatures that can't be blocked like Skulk creatures and Colossal Hammer. Um, so like Slither Blade. I would love like a
Their blade.
a Slither Blade Colossal Hammer deck. Um, because like that's the kind of shit that I would be like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Or like maybe it's just like a Saboteur deck that like you could play your rogue that you like so much. See, whatever, fucking anything that would like you're gonna need cards is the problem. So like anything that can get more cards into your hand, and preferably if they're dealing damage to your opponent, I think that would be the best way to be able to do it. Though you could still play SRAM because they're equipment. So you'd probably have 4 copies of SRAM, and then Sigarda's Aid and Colossal Hammer, and then anything else you could jam in there. I don't know. Oh, honestly, you're probably just playing Skrelv.
It's always Skrelv.
Because then you get to they can't block and you protect them, and toxic if you end up doing double strike stuff. Maybe. Okay. It sounds I mean like you don't really care about the toxic part, but it seems kind of fun. I am excited
It
for
sounds
this.
like a thing. Sounds
Yeah.
like a thing.
I'm excited for this card to come into to Explorer for sure.
And my favorite
Definitely.
part is you get to put like one of random equipment in there. Oh, I have one sword in this deck.
Exactly.
And like, yeah.
Yeah. Any just like sweet equipment from whenever.
I have a shadow sphere.
Yeah, Shadow Spear. That's a good one. Actually, that's a great one. Um, no, seems no. Now you got me all excited for this. Classic.
And now you're gonna have to search through all the like red, white jank rares that they've tried to push on us for years that are
It's
equipment themed.
like what's the cheapest like equipment with the highest equip cost? That's what I want.
Pretty much, yeah. Sort by equip cost.
Mhm. But anyway, Jeff, I do want to ask you about another deck that like really doesn't matter and isn't real at all, but like
Love
also
it.
who knows?
Yeah.
But a card that I'm super stoked to have in the format, and I'm sure you are too. But just we have like standard has all these like Grixis decks where you're playing like Shieldred just out of nowhere and Invoke Despair. Well, let's take out Invoke Despair. Let's keep the Grixis, have Shieldred, but we also play Fevered Visions. How about this?
Oh,
Right?
God.
And so all we're trying to do is like make your opponent draw a bunch of cards and die.
Uh-huh. Fever Visions is like legitimately good. It's back in the day, this card, it would surprise you because
which
Your
is
opponent
what,
gets a couple of these out, like you
yeah.
die fast.
And so, like, basically, I'm thinking you play 4 Fevered Visions, and then
Mhm.
Shieldred's just like your extra copies on top of that. Um,
The old Fevered Visions Shieldred combo.
yeah. Either that, or you're playing, instead of Shieldred, you're playing Jeskai, and you play Lauren, who, like, comes down, kills one of their Fable of the Mirror Breakers, and then makes them draw cards.
Hmm.
Or both, and just
All
play,
of it. Yeah,
yeah,
four color.
4 color.
I kind of I could get behind this.
People have
Fevered
been
Visions Shieldred.
they've been doing stupid enough stuff
Yeah.
with, like, some of these, like, these, like, mana bases. Um, but it's funny. Fevered Visions is one of the cards that I loved when I was playing duels on my phone, and it just makes me, like, because I didn't know that it was like people were actually building good decks with this card. It just looked sweet to me, but it just
Mhm.
seems like it would never get there. Um, but no, I love Fever Visions, and finding, like, I think giving myself the work to try to brew a deck with it is just terrible, because it's just not gonna work out. Finding somebody else who does it and playing that deck is
Yeah.
something I do want to do.
I think somebody will make this.
Yeah, because I'm much more interested in that. I think brewing the Sigarda's Aid deck, I could do that better. This
Mhm.
deck, I need somebody to give me some to give me some help. But I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm more on board with that than I thought I was going to
Yeah,
be.
it just, because all I'm like, it just feels like we're playing with Fever's Visions right now. Um, Also, sorry for everyone who doesn't know what Fevered Visions is. As I
Oh,
like,
yeah, maybe we
I'm just
should
going.
tell them.
I should probably tell you. So it's an enchantment. So it's 1 blue-red for an enchantment. At the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws a card, and if the player is your opponent and has 4 or more cards in their hand, Fevered Visions deals 2 damage to that player. So basically, you just want to keep your opponent's hand filled. And so if you have Shielded as well, every time they draw a card, they lose 2 life. And then if they have, at the end of their turn, if they have too many cards in their hand, they lose a bunch of life.
Mhm.
So a lot of the deck that I liked was that you're, like, bouncing their permanents back to their hand, so that they have too many cards in hand, um, and then they just, like, they end the turn with just too much stuff, and they don't have enough lands to play everything. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I don't think the competitive version bothered with any of that shit. It was just like a control
probably.
deck that killed with Fevered Vision, and it was both a win con and kept your hand full.
Mhm.
Um, so it was just kind of like you get 2 of these or whatever, and most decks just can't keep up with that and cast enough cards to not end up taking damage.
Yeah. See, I would play top end. See, this is why I don't want to build a deck, because my top end would be River's Rebuke, where you bounce all their permanents. Yeah, you got too
Take two,
many.
bitch.
Yeah, fuck you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
six. It's a 6 mana take two.
Love it, love it, love
6 mana shock. Um,
it.
anyway, that is where my brain would go. But and that is why I
I
don't
think
build.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Oh man.
You gotta think a little more like Matt Nass, where it's like, how can we build a deck that actually has like the dumbest win con ever?
Yeah.
I think he definitely takes the cake with Pyrite Spellbomb as my win con.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's gonna top that one.
That it's a pretty dumb one. But Oni Colt Anvil is very close.
Hey. That card does work, man. That
Yeah,
card
yeah.
does work.
It's true. You don't have
It's like the
to.
cat combo just combined into one card. You
Yeah,
know, they didn't bother with the making you draw the 2 pieces separately. It's just the
yeah.
one card.
It's true. It would be more Matt Nass if you had to, like, cycle your whole deck to do it each time.
Yeah.
So, like,
And it pings for one each
yeah,
time.
yeah. So you only play one copy of your anvil.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Anyway, Jeff, do you have a card?
Yeah, so I figured given the nonsense train here, we should take a minute, step back, and talk about some good cards for a while. Um, Now, this is really where we're going to test my knowledge of what's already, and we're going to kind of rapid fire these because I think people know a lot of these cards are good. Um, we're really going to test my knowledge of what's already on Arena.
Okay.
So here's what I'll throw out at you.
Mm-hmm.
On Arena, yes or no? Bedlam Reveler.
Uh,
I don't know the answer, by the way, so I don't know why I'm asking you.
I don't. I don't know. Um, let me let me look at it first. Um, can you read the card for us?
Okay, what is Bedlam Reveler? It's 6 red red for a 3/4 Devil Horror. Costs 1 less to catch for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. It has prowess. When it ETBs, you discard your hand, then draw 3 cards.
I'm gonna say no. I think no.
Okay, I believe you are correct. I'm looking at the card on MTG Arena Zone, and it says not legal in Historic. So that's going to be my proxy for
Yeah.
is not on Arena. So this card is great. It's the type of card that um, I love. Basically, I mean, you're trying to like play out your hand and then play this, and you draw 3 more cards. Um, it's obviously like really good with flashback type effects because it helps you discard those cards. You don't feel like you discarded as many cards. And so this kind of opens up a new style of deck, which was like very popular in Modern back in the day, the Mardu decks in Modern that
Mm-hmm.
paired this with Lingering Souls and like Young Pyromancer and stuff like that. But basically, it's a mid-range deck that kind of can grind forever. It never runs out of gas, but it's like a spell slinger deck, kind of, because this thing wants you to have instants and sorceries.
Mm-hmm.
When your opponent plays this for 2 mana, it's a 3/4 prowess, and then they draw 3 cards off it. It just feels busted. And so what your deck is trying to do is like really, really optimize for that experience. Now, to be fair, when that deck was at its best, uh, we're talking Faithless Looting days. So um, maybe a little lower power level this time around.
Yeah.
But this is like a, you know, this card has its history as being one of the best cards in a strong deck in Modern. So it definitely has like the power level to get there. It's just around whether there's enough overall support for it to be a thing in Explorer.
Interesting. This is definitely that card that like I got in a random pack or like commander deck and was like 6 red red. I'm never gonna read the rest of this card. It just like go into that category of Zach doesn't read cards that have mana costs that look like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of such mana costs, by the way, folks.
Yes.
But then you see something like 1 red red, and you're like, ooh, this could be Stone
Ooh.
Rain.
Yeah,
This could be a
exactly.
Stone Molten Rain
Is
variant.
this like a pillage? What is this? I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually my mind caps off at like 3. I'm like, that's it.
um, okay, let me throw another card at you.
Okay.
Liliana, the Last Hope.
I'm pretty sure we don't have this one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure as well.
And nope, not yet. Sick.
Okay. So there we go. This one is obviously very, very strong. It's a 3 mana planeswalker for 1 black black. +1 is up to 1 target creature gets -2/-1 until your next turn. -2 is mill 2 cards, then you return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. -7 is beginning of your end step, create X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. So the reason this one's so good, first of all, it defends itself quite well for a 3 mana planeswalker. Like -2/-1 can actually kill stuff. You usually don't get that ability on this type of thing to actually kill something. But also -2 power is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Then it can grind, it can get you creatures back. But mostly the weird thing is that this card actually, its ultimate is really relevant because it comes down on turn 3. It's it just becomes a thing your opponent has to deal with because the -7 wins the game. It doesn't improve your position. It doesn't make it an uphill battle for your opponent to win. It wins. It's like I gotta imagine when you get the -7 off, you win like 99% of the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is a game somewhere that somebody has beat a Liliana the Last Hope emblem that went for a few turns, but generally that's not going to be the case. Um, and so that's really unusual in a 3-mana planeswalker. Like usually the ultimate is just good, but because it's 3 mana, it doesn't just win. And so this one is like, if your opponent plays this on turn 3 on the play, suddenly it's up to 4. You're like, my clock just literally became like 3 turns. Like, I have to kill that thing.
Wow.
Which is really powerful on top of already being pretty good. Its other abilities.
Yeah, because this card always just seemed like a zombie card to me for whatever reason, but like actually looking at it again, it doesn't say anything about. For whatever reason, when I read this, like whenever the last time I read this card, it said something about returning a zombie creature card from your graveyard to your hand, but it doesn't. So
No.
in fact, this is just awesome. This card's
Yeah.
sweet because I was like locked and loaded to talk about the zombie deck with Relentless Dead, but I mean, like this could totally be a deck. Relentless Dead is like black for a 2/2 zombie with menace, and when it dies, you can pay a black to return to your hand, or when it dies, you can also pay X and return another target zombie card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. So I was expecting,
really good card.
I was expecting like because that is a great zombie card to get. Like it just obviously it's relentless, so it comes back and it comes back and it comes back, and it's so frustrating and hard to deal with. And Liliana seems like a great way to do that because you're also just recurring creatures and like bringing stuff back to your hand. But Liliana can also fit in like a lot of different stuff. Like you don't need this zombie shell. And I don't know, this card, I'm actually pretty excited for this. As I've been playing with Liliana of the Veil a lot, like one black just suits Liliana as a mana cost.
Yeah.
But this one also seems really exciting because it just feels, I don't know, it just feels different. And I feel like I'm not a good enough player for Liliana of the Veil to be good. Or like maybe it's just not that great anymore. I can't really tell. I tend to err on the side of I'm not good enough to play this card. But it just always seems to just not do enough. And this seems to have more like ultimate potential, like you were talking about earlier, where I can just play it on 3 and just like plus it without any repercussions. So like, yeah, I can just plus this over and over again and probably get there.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember GP Reed Duke.
No.
GP
What?
Reed Duke was, so I forget what GP it was. But it was a Grand Prix, and they were doing an experiment where for coverage they would follow Reed Duke. So every single match was Reed Duke.
Right.
And then they'd talk to him between rounds and stuff. So people called it GP Reed Duke. I don't think that's officially what they called it.
I thought that was a joke, but like, yeah, I do remember hearing about this. I have not watched GP Reed Duke.
So that was a legacy GP, and he played Grixis Control, and he played this as one of his win cons, just in his Grixis Control deck, because it would just come down and just inevitably tick up and then zombie his opponents out. And Reed Duke did, I don't think he top 8'd, but he did quite well in that GP. And there's a few matches on camera where it was just Liliana just ticking up every turn. And then he's like, I don't know, just countering what his opponent does with Force of Wills. And what's the card that makes them discard 2 cards at random? Like just pulling that kind of shenanigans. And...
Oh, geez.
No, a sinkhole like destroys a land. But what was it that?
Oh, sorry. Him to Turok.
Him to Turok, yeah, like that kind of stuff. Just like, oh man, I love this. And Liliana coming. I think part of it was that there's a lot of X1s, like come down, kill your, Delver or whatever. But yeah, that was legitimately how he won a lot of his matches. So this card is Reed Duke approved
Approved.
in Legacy.
Yeah. That's I didn't realize it had legacy legs. Oh, The Last Hope. You're looking so much more exciting now.
Sometimes I wonder
Wow.
if it's because he's only allowed to play 4 Liliana of the Veils. But
Yeah, or just any sort of Liliana, yeah.
yeah,
Um, that's sweet. Makes me more excited. And Mythic. Ooh,
I
budget.
know. Easy on
Budget
the
deck.
wild card.
Yeah. That's
All
like
right.
the arena regular stamp is like, hey,
That's right.
if it's mythic,
Man, I wish this
that's
card would have been mythic instead.
instead of a rare, man.
Then I'd play it.
Yeah.
Uh, All right, let me throw this one at you.
All right, give it to me.
Eldritch Evolution.
Ooh, I don't think we have this one, but I'm pretty sure. Yes, we don't have it. It is not legal in
Nice.
Explorer.
Card is fantastic. Um, not too much to say. It's like it plays a slightly different role than Collected Company. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess again, should read it. Not everyone necessarily knows it. But it's 1 green for a sorcery. Additional cost to cast it, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less. X is 2 plus the sacrifice creature's mana value. Put that on the battlefield. So you upgrade a creature to anything in your deck that has mana value, like no more than 2 greater. When I read this card, I was like, oh man, they really put too many conditions on this. Like, I have to sack the creature up front, so I have to have a creature to sack. Then I have to go get something only mana value 2 or greater, or two greater. I was totally wrong. This card is very strong. Um, it tends to want to go in like creature combo decks though, where you have one like really important creature that's central to
Mm-hmm.
your strategy that you always want to go find. I don't know if we have that necessarily in Explorer at the moment. I don't know if there's like Heliod combo decks is a thing in is that like possible to make an Explorer?
No, because
I don't think
they
there's the second piece.
yeah, we needed the other piece because they got rid of Walking Ballista, so we couldn't do that. And they didn't even put Walking Ballista on Arena. Wait, isn't that what happened? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that was literally the thing that we were talking about with, not literally, but like they didn't put Walking Ballista on Arena because it was already banned in Pioneer. So they're like, what's the
Right.
point?
Yeah.
And yeah, I forgot about that. All that, man. Um, but yeah, this is interesting because Eldritch Evolution is similar to um, Enigmatic Fires, which is like the enchantment version of this, which only goes
Hmm.
+1, but it happens every turn.
Oh, right.
So I wonder if people will just like I wonder how popular this card will actually be, and if there's like a creature one, if going +2 is going to be good enough for this like one off to be. But it's also at 3 mana, so like you can do it much faster. Um, I don't know. I could see people just like saying, "Hey, if I'm going to play a deck like this, I'm just going to play Enigmatic Fires or whatever version of that deck."
Yeah.
Um, but
There needs to be that like 4 drop that you just really
need.
need. And then you go 2 drop this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like,
And grab a 4 drop.
and it should be I win or very
Mm-hmm.
close to.
Or very close to. Yeah, I don't know.
But I just love this card. Big like Court of Calling fan, and this is a different way to achieve like a similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. All right, glad to hear that one wasn't on Arena because I was pretty sure I was like, if it was on Arena, I would have built a deck with this.
Something with it, right?
I would have these in my collection if it was on Arena. What's another card that's had some tournament stories behind it? Traverse the Ulvenwald. This is 1 green. This is
sorry.
on?
No. It's not on, but like, go ahead because I was looking at this card too.
Yeah, sorcery, 1 green mana. Search your library for a basic land, put it in your hand. But if you have Delirium, which means you have 4 different card types in your graveyard, instead you search your library for a creature or any land, not just basic, reveal it and put it into your hand. So basically, the way this tends to play out is in the early game, it helps you find your land drops. And then in the late game, it goes and gets whatever bomb creature or like whatever creature you need at the time. So you tend to build like a toolboxy kind of deck with a bunch of different value creatures. Um, Another card that I love and played a lot of.
Yeah, this card I actually literally don't think I've ever seen this card before today when I was looking at stuff.
Oh, it's so
Um,
good.
but I love that if you have Delirium, you can get any type of land, which also
Yeah.
now includes things like Boseiju and
Hmm.
Aganjo and Adawara, which becomes a lot more exciting. I think, and as we're looking at this and everything, Delirium is going to be so much more interesting now that we are getting a new card type to like, because I don't really know, like, we don't know anything about this card type,
Right.
but adding an extra one just makes it so much more exciting to try to play with some of these Delirium cards and see if there is a way to break it in Pioneer or do something. So um,
Totally.
I
Like
really,
this could be what Pioneer or Explorer needs to bring Delirium back.
mhm,
This card's a huge part of it because, like, I mean, the face value, like the surface level thing of this card is you only have to put one Emrakul in your deck if you're playing
mhm,
four of these. You don't have to put multiple Emrakuls. And the problem with Emrakuls, it's bad when you draw it
mhm,
unless it's late.
yeah.
So this is like, well, I'll go get Emrakul if it's late, or I'll go get my Ishkana, which
Mhm,
I only have I can afford to play just one of and stuff. Um, but it's just seen play in like modern decks and stuff. I think Jund Death's Shadow, the green was like for this and
oh,
Tarmogoyf, and it'd just be like, I'm just gonna go get my Death's Shadow to whoop your
so
ass with. Um,
that
so
sounds
this card is
exciting.
like seen play in a lot of you know tough environments to crack the meta in. Just because one mana and it offers the kind of flexibility that it does, just ends up being enough. Um, so I really like this card. You don't even have to be all in on Delirium as long as your deck can reasonably hit Delirium.
Mhm.
Like it reminds me a bit of the energy one that would like just get you a land and give you two energy, and that card was like busted in
Oh
standard.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was like, why is this card busted? I don't know why it's busted, but it is. And it's just
Mhm,
because it just gave you too much. It just like fixed your early game and then also helped your late game.
mhm.
Now this doesn't do both at the same time, but the fact that it's like one or the other makes it never a dead draw. This is a fun card to play with.
Nice. I this is one of the ones that I was excited for because it does seem great. And one of the ones I was hoping that they had downshifted to uncommon because that would have been great. One of the cards that
No
I
chance
was
on that.
yeah, one of the cards I was wondering if it got why it got downshifted because there. I mean, it's mainly the lands, but anguished unmaking was one that I was like, oh, is this already on arena? Um, and that's why they're downshifting it or what is going on, but it isn't, and so they're just straight up giving us, hey, here's a great removal spell, just have it, just it's for free.
Hmm.
um so I do think that is nice. I don't know if there's any decks that are like really any like white black decks that are like sick, we were just waiting for an anguish or making thing, but being able to give it to everyone as an uncommon is uh, just that's like a feels automatic to me. Just like, yep, I will take four of these and I'll just have them
Sure. Yeah.
just if I need them.
This is a fun and interesting card because you never really want to play that many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think as well, like losing life is a bigger downside than it used to be when this card was printed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it used to be, well, this is just good. You tend to play it and you side it out against aggro. And now it's like, how many of these do I even want? Like one, just for the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
But three life is a lot of life. So I'm not that shocked to see it downgraded, actually. I think in
Yeah.
today's game, with just like it's a bit faster, um, just three life, it's a bigger downside. It's like how life gain is better than it used to be.
Yeah.
Everyone always thinks like life gain stinks. It's actually pretty good now. Whenever you staple 2 life onto something, that makes the card a lot better. And this is the exact opposite effect, right? You're stapling -3 life onto it.
That's true. It does get just about everything. Yeah, it doesn't get lands, which is pretty huge.
Oh man,
Especially
I wish it got lands.
if you got lands.
I'd slap 4 of these, and that's worth the 3 life.
Yeah, for sure. Like get rid of your fucking
And I would never target anything but a land with this card.
yeah.
To do
Yeah,
the whole,
just
I'd be playing Mardu Stone Rains.
Stone
That's what
Rains.
I would be doing in
That
historic.
yeah, it does sound great. But it's kind of like because I was looking at Imprisoned in the Moon, which this is a like commander card that I don't even know if people still play this card. But it's a great way to get rid of people's commanders because it's
Kind of a douchey way to get people's
yeah, you turn their commander into a land so that they can never get it back because they have to figure out a way to like sacrifice a land or something.
Well, thanks, guys. Fun game.
Yeah, fun game. Thanks a lot. So that was a big thing people do. But playing this on top of somebody's like oh god, Nykthos, and doing that whole thing doesn't seem very strong, but giving us the option for people to try it sounds fine. People aren't really doing that in any other format, so I don't think it's good. But again, I'm going to say this again. Giving us the options to try those things is always what I want, because we can figure out really quickly on Arena. So thank you.
Yeah. And this one's a common, right? So
exactly. So who cares?
If I lose wild cards,
whatever. All right, Jeff. We're getting to the end. My beer is almost empty, and we're gonna have to rate these beers. So you have the option. Do you want to talk about one last card? It doesn't even have to be a crazy awesome one, but you got one more.
Yeah, there's a card that I have to mention. So haven't mentioned it yet. And that would be my boy, Crawling Sensation.
I knew it. I'm like waiting the whole time. I'm like, he hasn't talked about this card yet. What's going on?
Well, saving the best for last.
Okay.
So,
of course.
I guess there might be a couple of people who don't know what Crawling Sensation does. So I will read it. It is 2 and a green for an enchantment. Beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 2 cards. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, for the first time each turn, you create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Now, this was a key integral part of my favorite deck that I've ever built. And this card always caught people by surprise because it is way better than it looks. Basically, this card reads, I get a 1/1 every turn. So your turn and mine. So it's kind of like a Bitter Blossomy kind of thing, because it's the first time each turn. So it's going to be on my turn and then on your turn, and then every turn for the rest of the game. But of course, that's quite powerful. So you need to throw some hoops in the way to get that going. And so you have to build around it to turn it into that. Is essentially what the card is. But that's how I like to frame it so people have a bit of an understanding. Like, this is like double Bitter Blossom, but you don't lose the life. And I guess your things don't fly. So it's like double Skrell's Hive, let's say. Except your things can block.
Yeah, there you go.
But that's what makes this card good. And I built this deck. I had 2 versions of it. The Jund one was my favorite, but I also had a Sultai version, which I did better with in like the tournament scene. But basically, you pair this with the Gitrog monster. Gitrog monster also wants lands going to your graveyard. That's like it's thematic thing. It sacrifices lands, but you draw cards and respond. And every time a land goes to your graveyard, you draw a card. So it's just like this crazy value engine. And you're playing all of the cycling lands, which were from Amonkhet. And Evolving Wilds was like I joked that Evolving Wilds was the best card of my deck because it was just like a guaranteed land to the graveyard, which is
Yeah.
all I asked for. It's a land to the graveyard. Um, and funny enough, there's another card that is in this set that I loved that was Noose Constrictor, which is 1 and a green for a 2/2 reach. Discard a card, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So this would let me discard lands, which was key because all these cards say is a land can go to the graveyard from anywhere. That could be from your library, battlefield, or hand. So you had all these random ways of getting lands to the graveyard, whether it was sacking lands, whether that was milling yourself, whether it was Noose Constrictor, discarding lands. And man, could this deck grind. Like, if you're going to play a mid-range kind of game against me, I would always win because I'm going to draw like, when you get going, you're drawing as many cards as you want. You're making, multiple 1/1s a turn. And one of my favorite synergies was you attack with Noose Constrictor. If they don't block, they're dead. Because anytime a land goes to your graveyard from the Gitrog monster, you draw a card. So generally you could get Noose Constrictor up to like 12/12, 13/13 kind of thing, because you would have 4 or 5 lands in your hand and they replace themselves when you discard them. So people would be like, all right, no blocks, just like, okay, discard, 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 14, you're dead. And it was just like, people often did block because they didn't realize that would happen. But it's just like, because it doesn't always trigger necessarily. If I discard a land, I'm going to draw another one. So it's like, it's always how many cards do you have in your hand? 5. It's like, okay, no blocks. And it's like, okay, but 3 of them are lands, which you didn't know about. So that means it's at least 8. And if I draw more lands, it's more than that. Like 8 plus 1. So it's at least 10. And if I draw more lands, it's more than that. Yeah, this deck was just super, super fun. Nobody had any idea what was going on ever. And I'm just so glad to like see all these cards back.
That is so awesome. Because we have the Gitrog Master, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I was, when the Gitrog monster was like came to Arena, I was like, it's missing its homies though. It needs Crawling Sensation, Maybe Noose Constrictor, we could find something better now, but it needs Noose Constrictor.
No, Noose Constrictors, that's the part I like the most. Making all the 1/1s and stuff, that's like good, and it's like definitely a thing. It's like an engine for sure. But like the thing that I like, also it can kill you out of nowhere. That's what I like.
Yeah.
I
love that too.
I love the kill you out of nowhere. That's awesome.
And the cool thing is we have more lands that send themselves to the graveyard now with like channel lands and stuff. So
that's true.
It's like channel land triggers all of my land going to the graveyard stuff. And I knew Boseiju was good. Holy crap.
You know what's really bad is that like I have to buy some for like a Pioneer tournament. And so I like sold a bunch of cards.
We knew this day would come.
All right. You got me. And it's not even 1. I think I have to buy 2. Oof.
Hey, blame Benton, man.
God damn you, Benton. And me wanting to play your deck.
Yeah.
Anyway, holy shit, that's awesome. Are you going to try to recreate that deck in Explorer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know where the upgrades are coming in, because that was a standard deck, but find some.
Yeah, that seems so sick.
At the very least, we have Cycling Triumphs now, which on its own is going to be a huge upgrade.
Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, sorry, I'm just dreaming about that. You also have Fabled Passage.
Fable. Yeah.
Fabled
Passage and Fable the Mirror Breaker. I could discard lands with that.
Oh, that's true. Oh, you get 2. Oh.
This is going to make Fable. This is Fable the Mirror Breaker's time to shine, man.
Yeah, so now it's going to be like a Jun's deck. I was hoping that maybe you'd add like white or something for, I don't know.
I could do Abzan. I'm sure we could make an Abzan.
Do Abzan because then you can play the other Gitrog Master when March of the Machine comes out. So
yes, I forgot about that.
So there you go. Boom. It's settled. No Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Thank God. But God, anyway.
Fabled Passage. You're right. That's so good.
Yeah, this episode ended up being longer than I was expecting, but I'm really glad that we got to talk because I got a lot more excited about Shadows over Innistrad just because of it. So,
Mhm.
um, oh, I was a little down, but like, thanks for bringing me back up. I appreciate it. Um,
Oh yeah, I can talk Shadows over Innistrad Jank all day.
love it, I love it. But it is time for last call. We have two beers to rate this evening. We have the Gummy Venus and Steeplejack's Tropical Stout. I'm going to put them back on the same side so you don't know which one I'm going to pick later, but we will pick our favorites for the evening. And as always, we rate our beers on a scale of bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. Look at that. As always, this has nothing to do with what tier you are in currently, because everyone's in a different tier at a different time. So don't take any offense to what we're about to say. And what we're about to say is that bronze beers are trash. They're horrible. If you're in bronze, sorry, if you drink a bronze beer, you spit it out on the ground and you throw it in the trash can.
Yeah. Silver beers. These are basically just uninteresting. Macro brews find themselves in this category.
Gold beers are fine, but you won't really think about them often or really drink them again.
Platinum, one step up. These are good, and you will drink them again.
Diamond beers are exceptional. You really like them, you pick them up often, and you show them to your friends.
And Mythic, best of the best. These are your favorite beers.
Mm-hmm. These are the ones you keep away from your friends so they won't drink them.
That's right.
Because you want them for yourself. Jeff, do you know which beer you're going to pick tonight?
Think so.
I'm a little conflicted, so.
This one wasn't easy. I feel like we've had a few easy ones where I just knew right away.
Yeah.
I'm going with my gut here, though.
Oof, it's so hard. I think I got it. I know which one. Okay. Ready? Three,
Yeah.
2, 1. Gummy Venus. Ah, yeah.
Yeah, it pains me to choose the sour over the stout, but
Yeah, it was
had to
hard.
happen.
Had to happen. Gummy Venus, though. We have had this in our fridge for a long time. I got this a while ago, and I am very happy with it. Like, really interesting and like obviously beer enough for you to pick it, but like juicy enough for me to really like it. Have we ever agreed on a sour before? Yes, Jelly King. But besides that, this it was. I don't know if I got the. No, I did get a bit of rosemary in there too. I like this. It was all. It was all delicious. I think the lactose ones really bring out something else. You know, give me a little. It tames the sourness a bit and makes it more palatable. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, obviously that's what I was gonna start with is it doesn't taste like fruit juice. Tastes like beer with some sour, fruity funk to it.
Yeah.
But still I think there was like I think it was sufficiently sort of fruity and sour. So
Absolutely.
like you were saying, probably right in that middle so that we both can like it.
Yeah, I just got it. Yeah.
I had gone in with the intention of like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep my eye out for that rosemary, see if I can actually taste it. Totally forgot, and now I'm looking back and like, ah, fuck, that's like the one thing I wanted to do was see if I could taste the rosemary.
Yeah,
but
I had a moment in the middle there, and I remember being like, oh, it does have a bit of like this herbalness to it.
Yeah,
I already know I like Fairweather, and this, yeah, I can't even remember one that I liked better than this. I really like this one.
Yeah,
so
it was good
for sure. Diamond.
Yeah, I think for me this was a diamond, and the potential Simpsons reference, really.
Oh yeah,
really made it. So
yeah, definitely worth it. Gummy Venus, really good. All right, Steeplejack's Tropical Stout.
Okay.
So I want to hear your thoughts first, actually.
So my thoughts are a bit confusing because it's like I'm going to ask for the opposite of what I say I usually want. But I kind of wanted it to be like more tropical.
Mm-hmm.
I want like this was a stout first and then had like some tropical kind of fun added to it. But for some reason this was like because this was advertised as a tropical stout, I wanted it to be like more fruity
Mm-hmm.
and less like a stout. Um, but like in principle, they delivered what I actually like, which is
Yeah.
like a beer and it has some fruitiness to it that's fun.
Mm.
But I don't know, maybe it's just the mark. I hear tropical stout, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be weird. And it wasn't that weird, but it was good.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I agree. That's how I felt because I had tried this one before. It's how I felt the first time I tried it, and this time as well. Because I think I had it on draft and now on in a can, and the tropical part is what I'm missing. Um,
Yeah.
and even the tasting notes on the back, it kind of mentions like there's like molasses. I get that. Dried blueberry,
Mhm.
not so much. Cookie, maybe in there if it's a molasses cookie. Um, but yeah, some of those things that make it kind of stand out from stouts, not so much. So then this is our classic thing where like if someone tells us it's going to taste like a something and it doesn't,
Mhm.
sometimes it makes us a little worried about their I don't know. It's hard to trust them after that.
Right.
Um,
Did we get got by marketing kind of
yeah.
thing? Like,
Where it's like, oh, this will sell beers. And if it
yeah,
doesn't 100% make us feel like, oh, yeah, that's for sure what it is. Um, and that might have been the case here. I still really like the beer, and
that's the thing.
I,
It's still just a good stout. I feel
yeah,
like if they didn't tell me that I'm supposed to taste like blueberry cookies, I I would be like, this is a good stout.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, exactly. Like if it just said real ale stout, like I would be,
Mhm.
oh, this is sick. I'd probably give it like a diamond. With that being said, probably high platinum
Yeah, I think
because
it's platinum.
I just I don't there are other stouts that do tell me it's cookies and are cookies for sure. And you're like, this is yeah.
Right. And that's the weird thing where it's like this could come out more tropical and be a beer that I probably like less. Like if I had the two, I
Hmm.
would go for this one over the other one. But because they promised the other one, I wanted the other one kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Um and it also makes you just feel better about the people being like, hey, this is what it is. Like, we're not trying to
Right.
pretend it's something else, and like you drink it, and we'd be like, yeah, it's this, right? And you have to kind of pretend that it is, or like whatever. Have that weird. I'm just
Yeah.
imagining
Yeah.
their brewmaster sitting with me as I'm drinking it, and I'm just like, yeah, I got, yeah, no, I tasted
Tropical,
it.
right?
Yeah, it's really, yeah, right. This is what I said. So
Also makes me think like if the notes are molasses, blueberry, and cookie, how is that tropical?
that's also a question I had because tropical to me is like pineapple,
Mango.
guava, like, and those are the things like this sour, pineapple, perfect,
Yeah.
orange. These are
Tropical. If
tropical.
you said tropical for pineapple and orange, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like having an orange molasses chocolate stout, that wouldn't be
Mhm.
so much tropical, maybe, but like the orange would work. Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
Are
We're
we doing
making a
like a
hype.
Terry's chocolate orange stout now?
I mean, that sounds delicious because I don't think they're called they're not Terry's in the States, I think, but like,
Oh,
yes, the same type of, I don't know if
that's
they
right.
are. I can't remember, but I think they look a little bit different here, but yes, I do enjoy those. Anyway, um, those are the beers of night. Really good ones. Nice, great, great ones. So that's always feels good.
Yeah,
Jeff, let's go to closing time and
let's do it.
wrap this baby up. You can always reach us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You can also find us on MTG Arena itself. We'll be under the username Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg. That is ZEULBERG on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best place, the Discord channel. The link should be in the show notes. Please post any deck lists you're playing right now because I'm going to go in to that phase where I'm just consuming decks, and I need to
Yes.
find the one that sticks.
Actually, I piggyback on that because I love new deck lists. We love deck picks. Give us all the deck picks in our Discord.
Please send deck picks.
Deck picks. Mint. Um, Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes, follow us on Spotify, and leave us a review there as well. Go to our YouTube channel, give us a like, comment on one of our videos, subscribe, do that bell thing. I don't know what it does, but click it. It just any sort of interaction with our fans, it just means a lot to us, and that's a lot of what we want. It means a lot to us. It helps the podcast, of course, but we just like to meet all of you. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you that Shadows Remastered is full of top tier jank.
Good night. All right, that's fine.